So hi, everybody. We'll get going. Thank you for joining us on this session. I'm Patty Cormier, Director of the Maine Forest Service, and we're here to hear your input and comments on the Executive Order 41, a review of aerial application of herbicides for forest management. So Executive Order 41 directed the Maine Forest Service and the Board of Pesticides Control to review rules related to the aerial application of synthetic herbicides and to make recommendations intended to further protect waterways, wildlife habitat, and other natural resources. The draft review, which you are providing comments on, has been posted on the Maine Forest Service and Board of Pesticides Control websites for some time now. So the department and the Department of Inland Fisheries and Wildlife have been working on this directive since last summer and have produced this draft review. We request that comments focus on the content of this draft review, and this process was led by Bureau of Pesticides Control Director Megan Patterson. Megan is on the call and will be speaking on the process as well. So the session goes until 7 and is being recorded, and written public comments will be accepted by email until Friday, February 4th at 5 p.m. at forestinfo@maine.gov. And I wanted to acknowledge Rondi Doran and Don Mancius for helping with the logistics of this session. So with that, I'll hand it over to Megan, and after she speaks, I'll go over some of the ground rules for tonight.
Thanks, Patty. And I just want to add that if you're interested in reading and haven't read the full text of the executive order, it is on page 172 of the report, and you can also find it by Googling, Executive Order 41 FY 2021. So if that's something that interests you, I won't go over the details of it. But I want to thank Patty and Don and Rondi for arranging tonight's meeting. This is an excellent opportunity for everyone to get together and hear what folks have to say about the report. We're definitely interested in having feedback. So thank you for taking your time to read it and to attend tonight. It's much appreciated. And so just to give you a brief summary, I'm going to talk about what we've done to date, so what we've accomplished, and all of this is reflected in the report, but also at a very high level, the recommendations that the report provides for next steps. So to date, the Board of Pesticides Control worked to contract the expertise of Drs. Harold Thistle and Jane Bonds. Their credentials are included in the report to complete a review of parts A and D of the executive order and all of the subparts in each of those sections. And those parts address existing BMPs, or best management practices, for aerial application of herbicides, as well as the existing regulatory framework for aerial application of herbicides in forestry operations. In 2021, BPC staff used existing resources and federal funding to conduct a water quality study of aerial applied herbicides in forestry. That study was used to inform a more comprehensive water quality monitoring project that's proposed for completion in 2022. The details of both the completed work and the proposed work are included in the report. BPC staff also conducted a national survey of pesticide regulatory agencies and the regulations pertaining to aerial application of herbicides in forestry, as well as we prepared a summary of all relevant regulations. Both of those bodies of work were used by the folks contracted, Drs. Harold Thistle and Jane Bonds, to review and assess Maine regulations, existing Maine regulations. The Department of Inland Fisheries and Wildlife conducted a literature review regarding the assessment of wildlife habitat impacts relative to sites treated by aerial application of herbicides, also in the report. And of course, tonight's meeting is a part of what was required by the executive order, as well as the posting online and allowance for public comment. So in their entirety, all of these elements are a reflection of the requirements of the executive order. The major recommendations are included in the body of the report too. So that report includes a detailed discussion and summary of the findings relevant to all provisions of the executive order. The recommendations to amend rules provided in the report were prepared by Drs. Thistle and Bonds and are designed to accommodate concerns regarding aerial application of herbicides in Maine forestry. So those recommendations include setting of a maximum wind speed during application at 10 miles per hour for all cases, setting a maximum extent of nozzles on the boom at 75% of the helicopter rotor diameter, requiring that all anticipated buffers used in aerial application of herbicides in forestry be shown on all spray plan maps submitted to the BPC in advance of applications, requiring that all ISO, that's also International Standards for Occupational Health and Safety, regarding aerial application, and that all NAAA, so that's the National Agricultural Aviation Association, best management practices be used except where specifically overridden by regulation or direction from the state of Maine. And finally, that the state and specifically DACF staff consider the application of a variable buffer following additional work to define parameters by DACF staff. So again, I want to thank you all for participating in tonight's meeting, and I look forward to receiving your comments. So back to you, Patty.
Great, thanks, Megan. So just to go over a few of the ground rules. So individuals who registered in advance to speak will go first, and as time permits, others who wish to speak can do so. Speakers will be limited to 3 minutes each to allow time for as many folks as possible to participate. And if you would, if possible, turn on your camera when you're speaking. Please stay on topic with comments regarding the draft review, and please no personal attacks. And if someone has said previously what you intend to say, just say you agree and provide your new comments. And this is not a question and answer session, and the chat is closed. And I will start calling on the pre-registered speakers, and then we'll see who else wants to speak. And you can just, when we get to that, you can raise your hand in the reactions, or I guess just physically raise your hand with your camera on. So Heather Spalding, I see you're in here.
Sorry about that. I'm just having a little here. Okay. There we go. Can you hear me? Okay. Yeah. Okay. Good evening. I really appreciate your hosting this forum, and I appreciate that a huge amount of work went into gathering data. So my name is Heather Spalding, and I am Deputy Director of the Maine Organic Farmers and Gardeners Association. And I just will say at the outset that we were very much involved in LD 125, which sought to prevent or sort of stop the practice of aerial spraying of herbicides for forestry practices. And I think this is an ongoing concern for our community. We've been working on this for over 50 years now, advocating for policies that really help farmers and foresters and landowners generally reduce reliance on pesticides. And we're very concerned about the impact of pesticides on human health and ecological health as well. I guess I will say that we are going to submit written comments, and I don't want to take up a lot of time, but there were a few things that I think we will be addressing more specifically in the written comments, concern about the findings of the report. It did feel like a lot of the data that was referenced, a lot of the peer-reviewed research that was referenced on the impact of herbicides was I'm sure it was very important and valid peer-reviewed studies, but old. And I would have liked to have seen some references to more recent peer-reviewed studies and some of what we particularly learned about the impact that glyphosate had on endangered species across the country. But there's very alarming information that came out of the Environmental Protection Agency to showing that the vast majority of species listed on the endangered species list are threatened by use of glyphosate. Also, we were aware that the Journal of Molecular Biology and Evolution reported last year that there are serious threats to soil health when glyphosate is sprayed, and also with dicamba, but they're likely to contain higher amounts of antibiotic-resistant bacteria. So I think that that was just something that stood out to us, that it felt like there's more new science that I feel should be taken into consideration. The other thing that I didn't see, and I know it's a long report, so I may have missed it, but a big concern that was discussed in the legislative session was about climate impacts. And we heard from the forest industry that clear cutting and spraying with herbicides and planting new trees is better for climate than letting long-term rotations happen and letting old trees and mixed stands endure. And we really would argue that point and feel like that's an important consideration. So I think sorry, I'm getting some feedback. So generally, just wanting you to know that we do appreciate the hard work that's gone into this. We will be submitting comments, but we do feel that there is a lot of more recent science that was not in the report. So thank you very much for the opportunity to speak.
Thanks, Heather. And we had Dr. Sear. Is that who was scheduled, or who pre-registered?
Yeah, I don't see her here. And so next would be Pat Strauck.
Okay. Pat, you're up.
All right, I have control. Thank you, Director Cormier and Director Patterson. My name's Patrick Strauck. I'm the Executive Director of the Maine Forest Products Council. We certainly recognize all the work you've done and appreciate the opportunity to comment on the draft review. Overall, we appreciated that the fact was based on solid scientific information from peer-reviewed sources. We think it's instructive to see references to other parts of the world that were mentioned in the report, where herbicides are used, so that we can see how we fit in the rest of the world, and how important growing trees and making sure their competition is controlled is to the environment. Current practices suggest BMPs and measures that are in practice, such as droplet size and nozzle span. These things are recommendations in the report. I think they're reasonable, things that I think in many cases are part of the practice that we follow now, but we'll check with the operating procedures. Concepts that might be clarified a little bit in the report. We use herbicides a lot for conifer release of natural regeneration. It's not just a tool for plantations. And you might think about clarifying that a little bit. When we have budworm infestations, we have tremendous problems with raspberries and suppressing the natural regeneration. So that's an important part of the history of the use of these products. I noted the voluntary improvements backed by a scientific process was in the dialogue. I think it's important to recognize there's a lot of best management practices that are adhered to, so that's great. Spray buffer modeling seemed reasonable with interesting conclusions. And the wildlife section we thought was pretty thorough. I think endangered species are not imperiled by herbicides in general. That deserves a closer look. And I think there's some recent work by Hagen on birds that might be appropriate. I don't know if that's a published journal or a report that recently was stated, but we think there's some important additions to maybe citations that could be used. In summary, we think the major recommendations seem reasonable. I have the landowner community looking at the report in more detail, and we'll submit further comments. I think the report reflects how seriously foresters take their job and the responsibility they take for the safety of the environment, wildlife, and people of the regions where they work. So we know the use of aerially applied herbicides requires careful management, just like our farmers do in their fields. And this is an important, and I'm pleased that the report seems to recognize a lot of the issues that we've been trying to talk about on this in front of the legislature. Again, we'll submit written comments, but those are some of the quick thoughts that we would like to share with you going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Pat. So if Dr. Sear is not here, those were the 3 folks pre-registered. So if there are any others who would like to speak, put your hand up or put your camera on, let us know. This might be a short session, Megan.
Seems to be. I don't have any filler content, so maybe people want their Friday evenings back, I guess.
I'm not seeing any hands, Patty.
And I don't know if it's worth, if people don't know how to put their hand up, just unmuting themselves. Sometimes that's the case.
I'm not sure they can unmute themselves.
Oh, they can't do it. Okay, sorry about that.
Yeah, I have to do it.
So if you don't know how to put your hand up, there should be a little icon that's a smiley face with a hand, kind of protruding from the side of its head. That's how you find that.
It's usually in the upper right of your screen.
Or just turn your camera on and we can see you from there. I'm not seeing anybody.
Me either. Well, I appreciate those folks who did speak.
I know. That was great. I think everybody is saying it's time for Friday to start.
I think so too. Well, that's reasonable. And there's always the opportunity, if somebody wasn't here, right, there's always the opportunity to submit written comments as well. And, certainly those are taken seriously as spoken comments. So
Yeah, so remember, until comments are taken until February 4th at 5 p.m. and at forestinfo, all one word, at maine.gov. Well, good, unless there is nothing else.
I think Gary's saying no one can turn on their camera, but I think folks can raise their hands. I can ask my staff to make sure that's the case, or maybe Gary Fish is on and he can just try that.
We've enabled the camera for everybody.
Oh, okay.
Oh, there we go.
Yep, Pam's able. Okay, so that certainly is a doable thing.
Last chance. I wish I had some good jokes to tell, but I wasn't prepared.
Mine are too rowdy to tell here, so it's all right. I think
Well,
that's
good.
it. I think we can call it.
Okay, so thanks everyone for taking the time on your Friday evening to come on, and thanks for Pat and Heather for your comments, and please submit your written comments.
Thank you again. All right,
Thanks.
have a lovely weekend.
Have a good weekend, everyone.